بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, this is Gabriel Al Romaani and welcome to another episode of Defense Against Disaster, where we tackle some of the most fundamental attacks, the most fundamental objections, criticisms, and so on that people have against Islam. We are trying to build a framework where we can, as Muslims, protect ourselves, protect our faith, and make sure that we protect our communities, our families from the disaster of apostasy, leaving Islam. We are living in the 21st century, a century of information where people can access knowledge on many, many different platforms, be it social media, be it TV, be it books, you name it. People have access to information. It's not like before where information was, valued and it meant a lot. It took people a long time to be able to access information. It took a long time for people to collect information. Knowledge was very, very, very valuable, and people would sacrifice to attain this knowledge. Today, knowledge is at the tip of the fingers, and because of this, it has become sometimes quite cheap and easily manipulated. So now, because we don't have a strong system in place of verifying, of checking, making sure that the credibility of the person who says it, the credibility of the source, the credibility of the information itself, we are faced with an inundation of, flood of information coming in and reaching every single person. And our Muslim brothers and sisters, sometimes they get confused because they don't have the basics of Islam, they don't have the aqidah, tawheed, proper, solid understanding, and they want to check, they want to understand, they want to look into these so-called arguments. They're Muslims, they say, how can you attack my prophet? How can you attack my Islam? And then they look into it, and then they find themselves sometimes confused, unable to answer, unable to object to some of these issues. So because of this, brothers and sisters, we want to train ourselves. This is a course where we train, we understand, we reply in a simple way, comprehensive, not exhaustive. We said before, if you want to see exhaustive information, you need to go back to our website, the articles that we write, icraa.org, the work that we put in, the research that we do, where we actually tackle a lot of these questions from every single angle to make sure that we close any doors of doubts, those doubts that can settle in the heart and can really affect your iman. And when you're affected by an iman crisis, you'll find that, subhanAllah, it's hard for you to do anything for Islam. You'll be paralyzed because you're in doubt, but you're confused, you don't want to, Islam is what you're born with, a lot of you. Islam is what you're used to, what you're taught, it's your culture, but at the same time, you're not fully convinced, so you're in limbo, You lose, a'udhu billah, dunya, and sometimes a'udhu billah, akhirah. But when you are firm, when you understand, when you can push back, when you can reply, when you have the tools, that's when it matters. That's when you find you get strength and you move for the deen, and you can actually, subhanAllah, and implement and make a change in your community, in your society. So, very, very important, again, the basics of Islam should be solid. Number two, you should have understanding of the social factors of all the issues that are going around the world, the attacks and so on, so you know how to defend yourself. You might think that it's only the scholars, mashallah, that should be defending the deen. The reality is that it's not only them, because they're not, subhanAllah, in comparison to the ummah, the numbers are low. And not just that, the missionaries, the people who try to attack Islam, they will not target necessarily the ulama. They will want to come for you and I. They will want to come back to us and to, of course, bypass the ulama to get back to us and to catch us, to confuse us. They don't want to deal. They know that if they deal with people of knowledge, it's going to be a different story. So they want to prey sometimes on our ignorance, our inability to understand certain issues and to, again, confuse us. In the previous episodes, we discussed a bunch of contradictions, alleged contradictions that people have raised against Islam. These are popular. These are things that you'll find all over. We're trying to go through each one to answer them and to show how petty and how silly they are, to show how easy it is to answer them. And going back to our procedures, we said, first and foremost, you need to make sure that it is in context, okay? Don't be fooled when things get cut and sliced and put in front of you, and then you focus on it and you can't see everything else. Make sure that it's in context. Reference back to the Quran. Reference back to the actual text. Make sure that you understand, you have a holistic picture. Next, make sure that the translations are correct. Make sure that the wording is used properly. Next, make sure that you understand what a contradiction means. If I say this paper is white and I say this paper is red, there's a contradiction. There's a fact. Fact is right there. You can see it. You can check it. But there's a contradiction. It's a contradiction in the fact. You'll never have contradictions. You can't in the fact. When something is stated in one way and then it's stated another way, the same thing, obviously that would be a contradiction. But if I say something that is bound by time or changes, that is not a contradiction. For example, a law can be superseded by something else, by another law. So if we say Muhammad cannot drive, he's 15 years old, you cannot drive, it's a statement. Then we say Muhammad can drive. Is there a contradiction? No, actually, because the first one is at 15, the second one is at 19. So you see, something changed. Okay, one of the factors changed, therefore, one rule overruled the other one. One rule abrogated the other one. So when you look at the Quran as a whole, you never find any contradiction in facts. Allah says this is how it is. Fact. When it comes to rules, you'll find, again, not contradictions, abrogation, depending on what issue it deals with. For example, Mecca, do not fight. Okay, it's not the time. Forgive, overlook. Medina, permission is given to fight. Is there a contradiction? No. What changed? The situation changed. This is Mecca, a few years back. This is Medina, a few years back. You see, the hikmah is very, very important. We talked about, for example, drinking alcohol. The injunction was to not come drunk to salah. So basically that alcohol is allowed at that time. And then leave alcohol, abandon it. Do the two contradict? No. One of them was dealing with when the law was not yet solidified, and one deals with khalas, it's over, now it's done. And when you look at the context, you find the gradual approach to get rid of this social ill. If you think about it from a psychological point of view, psychological perspective, if you say, stop now, okay, one order. As Aisha radiallahu anha said, if these were the first orders that came, people would not follow. If you look at alcohol, right, the prohibition. Here, okay, do not drink and come to the prayer drunk. So drinking is allowed, but not when you come to prayer. This was the first injunction. The second injunction, leave it, do not drink. This is not good. So do the two contradict? No. One of them, it was at a time, the injunction, the law was not established. Another one, later on, when finally it was solidified. Look at it from a psychological perspective, right? The gradual change. Is there a contradiction? No. So actually, this is a proof for Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who created us, He knows best exactly how humans work. That's why Aisha radiallahu anha said that if these laws would come first, don't drink, don't commit zina, a lot of people would have not listened. They would have dispersed. But you see the gradual approach, quitting slowly, time by time, the real way that really affects and changes someone. So when we analyze these so-called alleged contradictions, we find that there is no contradiction. But subhanAllah, going back to the verse, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. Do they not ponder over the Quran? And if it was from other than Allah, they would have found in it many contradictions. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us very clearly that you have to make tadabbur. It's not like, oh, look, this says this is this, contradiction. No. You think, you understand, you seek sincerely to understand. And it's actually simple. It's not like it's going to take you months and years. And it's very simple, actually. Most of these things are very, very simple. But again, it goes back to the intention. Yeah, these people insist in putting these so-called contradictions, putting out there, trying to confuse people, and subhanAllah, I remember very well. A person who got confused over these small things. He says basically, I got confused, just basic things, so-called contradiction, and left Islam. He was praying, and then he realized that, why am I even praying? What is this? I don't even left. And then in the prayer, he left Islam. He stopped his prayer and then said, Khalas, I don't believe in this anymore. We're going to take a short break, inshallah. We're going to continue here, defense against disaster.
A servant is not afflicted with any punishment greater than having a stiff heart and being away from the Almighty, the Compassionate. Hearts are God's vessels on the earth. The most beloved ones to Him are the softest and the most purest. If hearts are nourished with God's remembrance and quenched with His meditation, it will witness great wonders and deep wisdom. Since our hearts are enlaced with layers of oblivion, we need to cleanse them to stand sound and pure before Allah. To know more, join us on Peace TV's new series on healing hearts, where we can join together the caravan of the sincere servants of Allah.
Let's try and purify our hearts from all destructive sins to taste true success in Healing Hearts. Every Thursday at 6 p.m. and repeat telecast at 5:30 a.m. India on Peace TV. Voice of truth.
But Allah does not look at your face, but rather Allah looks at your heart and looks at your action.
We Muslims know life is a test.
And so in order for us to have peace, there must be standards, there must be proof.
The voice of justice.
Indeed, to all nations we send a messenger, that they will call people to worship one God, Allah.
The one who is the only one who can grant true peace.
That we are looking for.
The voice of peace.
The last and final instruction manual for the human being, it is the glorious Quran.
The voice standing up for all of humanity against all falsehood. Islamic Voice, next on Peace TV.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Before the break, we were giving you some examples of the previous contradictions that we have addressed and trying to conceptualize what is actually a contradiction. So we understand, right? And we said, for example, that facts, if they're stated, okay, one thing says something, and then the same fact, we say something else. These two are contradicting. The car is red. The car is blue. It cannot be red and blue at the same time, unless it's half-half, and you have to say then that it's red and blue, half red, half blue. So it's contradicting. If we say, the first commandment says, there's no God but God, okay? I am your Lord, thy God. Thou shalt have no other gods except me on heaven, on earth, in between. It's very clear. This is the first commandment. And then the theology of Christianity says Trinity. Okay? For there are three that bear witness in heaven, the Father, the Son, and Holy Ghost. All right? And these three are one. Contradiction. Contradictions can never be in theology. Okay? Yani, it's you either have Trinity or monotheism. You cannot make the Trinity monotheism, monotheism to Trinity. No matter how you're going to try to go around it and do mental gymnastics. And it will be quite evident, actually. When you have a contradiction, it's very evident that someone is doing some mental gymnastics trying to fit the two. They're trying to squeeze the square in the circle. Okay? It's very obvious. But in reality, when you look, okay, you will never find contradictions in theology. Allah is one. Allah is the one who is the author of creation. If you say something else created everything, it's a contradiction. But when it comes to rules, regulations, and so on, things can be, as we said, abrogated, superseded, depending on the time, depending on what happened. The simplest case is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent many different scriptures with many different prophets. So can the people say when a new prophet comes, they say, no, we just stick to whatever was before. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the updated version, taking back people to the correct way. If they had any issues, any changes, any things that they've added to the deen, and we see it very clearly in the history of mankind. So people say, no, we don't want to follow. No, there will be a contradiction. We just stick to what we had. This is sadly the response of it. We found our forefathers doing this, we're going to do it. This is the correct way. No. But can someone say that there's a contradiction between the Bible and between the Quran in terms of God revealing? Of course. One came to supersede the other. One came to overrule the other, to make sure that whatever issues were in there, they're dealt with. And this is the way you follow now. Right? Because people will ask, why would God, abrogate? Can it be just one? It could have been sent only one book, one thing from day one. And we said it very clear. Human beings have been tempering. And then Allah sends again, because He establishes the truth. No one can change the words of Allah, as we said in the previous episode. No one can change the rules, regulations, laws of Allah by themselves. They cannot have the ability. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says will, He lets them. Okay, but in the end, Allah will establish His rule. No one can change the words. Allah will send another prophet. Allah will send the new scriptures, as He has done throughout the history of mankind. Ending with the final revelation, which is the Quran, the final book, the final testament, whatever you want to call the correct term, so you understand testament, book, final revelation, the words of Allah, okay, musaddiq, it verifies, it shows, al-furqan, it makes the criteria between what is right and wrong, it shows, it is a furqan against the other scriptures, it establishes what is correct and refutes what is wrong. And that's why we find in the Quran, Allah is refuting when people say, Allah is one of the Trinity, for example. And Allah says, there is no God except one God. Allah refutes the so-called holy status of Mary, for example. And He says, Allah will ask Jesus and Mary, have I told you to tell the people, I've given you the permission to tell people, take us as gods beside God? Allah is refuting a lot of these things. But at the same time, is establishing what was in the previous scriptures, the truth of it, and so on. So no contradiction. So we have to understand by concept. It's very easy for people to say, contradiction, if you don't understand. If you don't understand the concept. Right? It requires mental exercise. It requires people to really open up their minds. The Quran is not just a book that you read, and scriptures are not just something that you bow your head and you shake it and you read and read. No. It requires you to understand. It requires you to go deep. That's I remember one writer saying that the Quran is not a book that you just read. It is a book that you study. It is something that you act upon. You take action based on. Sadly today, and that's what happened with a lot of previous people, that the scriptures just become something for a certain day of the week, something for certain occasions, and then that's it. Right? And that's what the Muslims are doing these days as well. We're taking the Quran as, mashallah, a lot of us just as a nice sound, just as something to read, just as something to, finish. But what about implementation? What about understanding? What about really giving it its right? Not just the letters, and not just the tajweed and the beautiful voice, but the actual implementation of the Quran. If we do that, brothers and sisters, there is no doubt that we will be in a different state right now, that our ummah will be in a different state. There's no doubt that we will not face the problems we're facing today. But if we reduce the Quran to just, mashallah, just something that we don't understand, alhamdulillah, we'll get ajr for reading, as we know. Alif, la, mim. Alif is, a letter, and lam is a letter, mim is a letter, and Allah will give us reward, no doubt. There is barakah and reward in that. But see, Islam is not just about that. There's also more barakah and reward in implementing as well, and taking care and following the injunctions, not just the fatha, dhamma, kasra, and so on, but actually what it means and applying it in our daily life. But when we do that, you'll find that these so-called people who are opposing Islam, missionaries who are trying to confuse, will slowly hit hard rock. Okay, they won't be able to move and do the things that they're doing. This is the cure. You'll find that these people will not be able to colonize our mentality, the way we think. These people will not be able to influence our iman, our faith, and to paralyze us. These people will not be able to cause these serious, events of apostasy that are taking place, these huge numbers. So, of course, we can do it. We can educate ourselves. We can learn. But to really hit the problem from the ground, it requires for us to get back, for us to understand, for us to use this tadabbur, for us to have strong faith. When they hit, it bounces back. When they throw, comes back at them. Not now, it just takes one person to bark once, and everyone's like, oh my God, I don't know, I'm confused. What's happening? I need more explanation. SubhanAllah. And then the scholars get flooded with questions, sometimes very silly questions. They can't handle because there's too much. There's pressure. They have to answer here, they have to answer there. Parents are calling us, saying that, my daughter, my son, their faith is in danger. And okay, SubhanAllah, why? How much do they know Islam? Why is their faith in danger? Well, because they heard this, or they went to this school and they were teaching them that. Okay, why did you go to that school if you're not ready? Why do you box in a ring if you're not trained? Do you run a race if you're not trained? No, you don't. Do you swim if you don't know how to swim? So how do you put yourself in that situation if you're not trained? How do you put yourself in a situation if you're not ready to handle it? This is the question. Parents are calling us, complaining. Save our children. Save them. They're confused. We got the Darwinism, right? When they study science, it's almost impossible not to touch upon this. As much as the Muslim countries are trying to protect themselves from an educational point of view, their ministries and so on, trying to control this, it's there, it's available. If they'll be able to control it at the elementary level, they won't be able to control it at the university level, because the two are different. It might be too late when we scream that, we don't know what to do. We're in danger. We're on fire. Put out the fire. Well, fire should have not started in the first place. It's very difficult to deal with damage control. It's much easier to have prevention. So we need to look, because this is coming to the Muslim countries. It's affecting. No matter how much we try to fight it, it's not going to happen. But if we work ahead of time, if we work from the beginning, we train, we understand, we change the way we educate our children. Don't just put things under the carpet. It's not going to work. Don't just say, no, don't ask the question. No. It's not good for you. Okay, it happened. Yes, at the time, Prophet ﷺ, and some of the questions he didn't appreciate or didn't like, because the way they're formulated, because it was not time yet. It's not that he didn't want people to ask questions. It was excessive questioning that he was referring to. People have bad niyyah. They want to ask this, what about this, what about... And you're asking about things that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not revealed, take it as a rahmah. But you see, today, we have to understand, the Prophet also taught us a framework of thinking and how to deal with things, how to accommodate the changes that are taking place in our society, right? And today, even if you're not asking the questions, other people will ask the questions for you. So you have to protect yourself. You have to understand at least your ground, your base, to hold yourself onto, to be safe in. Don't put yourself in a situation. Understand and train your mind. Okay, where do you allow your mind to go, for example? Because the educational system today is telling you, don't put any limits on your mind. The sky is the limit. And even that is just a saying. Question, question, question. Be a critical thinker. But subhanAllah, without the tools, that can be very, very dangerous. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you so much, brothers and sisters, for watching this. We're going to continue, inshallah, bidnillah, in the future with a new episode, Defense Against Disaster. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.